Thank you very much for joining us this morning on our webinar on data governance in Qlik using NodeGraph. I can see a few familiar faces in the audience, but for those that don't know me, my name's Neil Thorne, and I am one of the sector managers here at Ometis. Just a bit of housekeeping before we start. Everybody is muted for the introduction and the demonstration, but you can post questions, which we would encourage you to do, and which we will get to in the Q&A session towards the end if we still have time. If we don't get around to your question, or we think it's particularly specific to you rather than the general audience, then we will contact you afterwards with an answer to it. So we're expecting this session to last around half an hour. So let's crack on. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Carl Anderson from our partner NodeGraph. Hello, Carl. You're on mute, sir.
I'm unmuted now. Hello, everyone, and good morning.
So Carl's going to introduce the company and solution, and he's going to explain how it adds value to Qlik customers. Carl will then hand over to CEO of NodeGraph, Oskar Gröndahl, who will take you through an overview demonstration. And following that, we will have the question and answer session. So, let's crack on then. Without further ado, Carl, can you explain to me initially, what is NodeGraph and how does it help customers with data governance?
Of course, and thank you very much for the introduction, Neil. And now you should be able to see my screen, right? Let's check here. And where is that button? That's where the button is. Cool. So let me just, it was some time since I last used go to webinars, so I need to rearrange a little bit here on my screen. But let's see. Just so I see the actual presentation. But you should see the full screen now, right?
Yep.
Awesome. Well, NodeGraph, we're a company working in the field of data intelligence, and namely and firstly with the data and analytics governance. We have been doing this for a couple of years. I think we are in our 4th year, just coming up to our 5th year. We've had quite good success so far, I would say, and do actually have 300 actual global enterprise deployments out there in the world. We have a market presence in over 25 countries, which means that we are, in that sense, truly global. And we also work a lot with partners. Partners is something that's very dear to our heart, and that we believe in working with partners such as Ometis, both on the installations, deployments, how to configure new software, in contact with customers and so on. So that's something that we do a lot here at NodeGraph. If you just, for once, what we are doing, well, these are the typical questions that we help answer together with partners and customers. And often organizations come to us asking, well, we have a problem right now. We don't really know where our data comes from. And that has led to that in our organizations, it's hard for us to trust and also act upon the fact, because we get so many calls and so many discussions from the actual data consumers that they don't really trust the data, and that means that they does not or might not act upon it and don't be this data-driven organization that we want to be. More direct questions could also be, we are in a changing world. There is a lot of stuff happening, new software, new capabilities, more data. And that means that a lot of organizations today also facing the fact that they either need to migrate data from somewhere to another place, or that they need to migrate from one tool to another tool, or that they have just found out that, well, we need to implement this new software. How do we do it in the most efficient and scalable way? We're also talking to customers about how we are sharing data. And this is very, very interesting. We believe that you can actually use metadata, which is bottom line what we do, in order to share data in the organization, to build a more trust in the organization as well. Everything boils down into something that often stems from, are we in control of our data? Who actually decides if we're gonna migrate? If we're gonna migrate, do we have full control of all the little bits and pieces that's related to one another in our data estate? Also, let me see. Yes, there we are. I mean, this is sort of say 5 different dimensions you would say that our platform is built upon: control, quality, automation, trust, and collaboration, which stems and also relates to the types of questions customer asks us as well. And when we are talking about control, we are talking about to be able to see the tiniest detail in your entire, in this instance, this is a Qlik webinar, in your tiniest Qlik, so to say, dependency field that's out there. Also working with quality in terms of have a test-driven approach. We're not going to cover that much in this webinar. It's going to be another webinar. But key is also to have an automated process, because if you want to scale efficient and if you want to scale confidently, then you need to have an automated process. And since there is so much things going on within the data analytics field, I mean, I guess you already know that in your own organizations that, I mean, changes are happening all the time. And that's why you need an automated approach into it to be able to have a software platform doing that manual work on the documentation, on the regulatory and compliance stuff, but also when you're changing, updating KPIs and so on. And this relates to the trust, and also that you can start to share this. And you can share this in an easy way with NodeGraph, with cataloging, which we have seen, especially since the last 6 months, I would say 6 to 8 months, that data cataloging has become a really, really hot topic, and also how you should work with it within your organization. This is a Qlik webinar, but we cover and they can handle a lot more than just Qlik, and it's both QlikView and Qlik Sense. We can also do on the front end side, on the upstream for the data consumers, we do Tableau, Power BI, but we're also working a lot on the downstream part of the data landscape as well. We have a pre-built Snowflake connector. If you're working with Microsoft SQL Server, we do that. And if you have like an ETL tool on Microsoft SQL Server, such as SSIS or SSRS, we cover that as well automatically. And we have just recently launched an Oracle connector as well. There is a lot of stuff going on with our deployment and development for the different types of solutions we can offer to the market. Also, when I have you on the line, I would like to share, this is a case study or a success case that we have done recently. And the idea here is just to give you like an intro to this. It will be available after the webinar as an online resource. You can dig in and read a little bit further. But I thought I'd mention this in this webinar, since it's very much is related to all the other topics that we're talking to. Waterfall Asset Management is a North American asset management firm. They are currently handling over $8.5 billion under in their portfolio. And they came to us having these types of questions that we just mentioned about trust. How can we assure that the process stems? How can we assure that when we are evaluating a new company, that we are totally in control of their data assets, independently of what sort of say method they are using? That's something that we did. And what they had previously was they had a very manual and a very offline process around that they need to put a lot of man hours and non-scalable assets, if I would say, into just to be able to get these first insights. So of course, they came to us, talked with us, and we presented a solution to them. And that solution was Data Atlas and also our import and export functionalities. So they are actually using it today to get control of data, and they are using Data Atlas from the lineage part. They're using the import-export function, and they are also using the catalog functionalities to create this unified catalog of their KPIs. So everyone at Waterfall Asset Management can really understand what the different types of data really means to them. what it has resulted in is very much improved efficiency. They are estimating themselves that they are saving upwards of 40 hours per month in just these non-scalable manual labor efforts. And also they have seen that their alpha, or the performance, has significantly increased. And as Shimon said, I mean, data is one of the most critical assets of any firm. Creating trust in data should be a no-brainer. So with that, I think I will need to give the stage to my dear colleague, Mr. Oskar. Are you there, Oskar? Are you ready?
I'm more than ever ready. Thank you, Carl, for handing over.
Awesome.
So I will share my screen now.
Looks good.
Good. All right. So you guys are all on mute, thanks to Neil, which is not that very nice because we can't have an interactive session, but I really encourage you to use the chat function to ask any questions whatsoever, and we will try to pick them up in the end of this session. But today I will do a quick introduction to NodeGraph, and just to give you the background of why I believe NodeGraph is a key to a successful data strategy. I used to work as a Qlik enterprise architect myself. And what happened with Qlik was that when we sold Qlik, we often started with maybe 1 or 2 applications. We built them really quick, and we provided a lot of value because the tool itself, both QlikView and Qlik Sense, are really strong in providing very fast value to the customer. The challenge what happens down the road is when you have maybe 100 or 125 applications, it starts to become a bit difficult to understand where does the data come from? What data are we using? What happens if I change over here? What would be the impact down the line? And things like that. And like Carl mentioned as well before, I think trust for the data is the key. If you start having problem with people questioning the quality of the data in any BI solution, regardless if it's Power BI or Qlik, you will have a problem. So if you can be proactive in telling the user that the data is maybe not up to date, or this is where the data is coming from, this is how we calculate the data, transparency. If you can provide that, you will have a much better discussion with the end user of your BI tool. So with that said, we're going to jump into the product itself. It's a web-based software that you install on-premise or run it in the cloud if you like. We have a couple of we have a couple of different modules, but most importantly, we have 2 different tracks within NodeGraph. We have Data Atlas, where we're focusing on the lineage, impact analysis, automated documentation, but we also have the Data Quality Manager. Is the data up to date? This value should always increase with 2% compared to last week. Or these objects or expressions in my Qlik Sense application, they should always be there. I don't want them to all of a sudden, just disappear. So we can test the UI of your Qlik Sense application, but also the data. But today we will focus on the Data Atlas part. And I would jump into the Dependency Explorer because I think this visualizes very much the capabilities that we have in NodeGraph. So if I open up the Dependency Explorer, we can see how the data is flowing from your right-hand side, where we have, in this case, a couple of Qlik applications, through our QVD layers, all the way back to the data sources on the left-hand side. And everything you see in NodeGraph is being done automated, and it works for both QlikView and Qlik Sense. And of course, also for Power BI and Tableau, and I will show you that later on as well very quickly. But for now, let's say we would like to understand where does the data come from in our sales application. Select it, hide unrelated node, and now we can instantly follow the data all the way back to the data sources. But I think the key here is not only to do it on a file level, because if I'm supposed to trust the data, I need to know exactly what is happening with the data. So if I expand here, I see the different tables that we have. If I expand again, I see the different fields. So if I would like to understand where one single field is coming from, I could do hide unrelated node, and I can follow that field all the way back to the actual data source in my database like this. Hang on, I'm just going to do a click there and do hide unrelated node. And there you go. So now we can see that ship date is actually a combination of 3 different fields from the transform step, and the transform QD are using 2 different QDs in the extract layer, and it's coming from the order table in our database, like that. And this can of course be used from the other side as well. For instance, let's say that today you get notice on that your DBA is going to change something in your database. What will be the impact of that? So you expand NodeGraph, select the table that they will change, do hide unrelated node, and we can instantly see what the impact will be if they update that field. So, excuse me, one important thing when working with the lineage part of a BI solution is not to only cover the transformations that you make, because all these tools, regardless if it's Qlik or Tableau, for example, you can do a lot of powerful calculations in the UI, in the actual expression of the application. So what you can do in NodeGraph is that you turn on the content layer, meaning that we also visualize what is happening within your application. So if we select the products application here, we do the hide unrelated node again, we expand the content layer. Now we see the different sheets that we have available, the actual sheets that the end user is seeing when they are opening up this application. If I open up my dashboard sheet, I see that we have these types of different objects. If I open up and want to view what kind of bar charts do we have. So we have one bar chart called average unit price per product. Expand again, we see the dimensional expression, meaning that we can now follow the actual expression, which is average unit price times units in stock, all the way back to its data source, meaning that we have full transparency and understanding of where the data is coming from, which is so important in your BI environment, especially when it grows and the demand on the analytics tool are way higher today than it was only 5 or 10 years ago. So it's very important to have the control and understanding of your data. Let me reset the layout. One important thing, regardless if you are developing iPhone software, data warehouses, analytics tool, is the documentation side of your development. I think that is very often overlooked when it comes to the analytics tool. And the reason behind that, I think, in my opinion at least, is that you can develop so fast in analytics tools, so it doesn't make any sense to spend 2 weeks on documentation and 1 hour on updating the code, right? So our approach to documentation is that if you have NodeGraph in place, you can use NodeGraph itself to keep the documentation up to date. And for example, you have this overview in the Dependency Explorer, but you can also right-click on a QlikView or Qlik Sense application and select Generate Documentation. And then NodeGraph will automatically pull together the Qlik system documentation for you. You can have NodeGraph to save it automatically, like every Monday. Or if you would like to view it on demand, like now, you just do generate documentation. But the good thing here is that this is driven by a template, meaning that you can combine this documentation together with your business documentation, meaning that you can enrich the already existing business documentation with the technical information, for example, what data sources are we using? Maybe you don't need to have all the transformations in there, but if you want to, we have them. So it's a very powerful function for you to always feel sure that feel secure in that you have the documentation up to date. I'm also going to show you one thing that I think is very important, especially when it comes to governance around your BI environment, because governance itself has so many different things that goes into that one. It could be lineage, it could be testing, it could be many different things. But one of the things that I think is very important to highlight when it comes to analytics tool is the deployment framework. deployment framework means that we have a good control and structure for how we should structure our files that we're using, how should the ETL look, and so forth. And putting NodeGraph on top of this, we will get a very clear picture how well we are actually following the deployment framework that we have all agreed on that we should use. Just to give you an example, so when you set up NodeGraph, you tell NodeGraph what to bring in. Basically, you would tell NodeGraph to bring in everything, because that's probably what you would like to see in NodeGraph. But you will also tell NodeGraph what are the governance structure that we have, a deployment framework structure that we have. And if we are using something outside that structure, NodeGraph will still capture it, but it will end up under files without rules. So you can see we have all these nice other categories called extract, transform, publish, and they are following the deployment framework. But files without rules are telling me that we are using something that is not in the structure that we have defined as our deployment framework structure. So we can open up, we see the directory where it resides. We can see it's an Excel file in this case. If I do hide unrelated node, we can see where it's being used. We can also see what data are we actually using from this Excel file. Now we can see that, all right, so this is data that we need. So the problem in this case is that the Excel file is just located in a place where we don't want to have it. We want to move it into a different folder, continue to read from that Excel file, but it should not be placed in this folder. And using NodeGraph, you will instantly see if data is outside your deployment framework structure. Last thing I'm going to show you is actually in the data catalog side. Data catalog is a very popular word right now, and I think we need to be very careful when we talk about data catalog. What is the data catalog, and especially what is the purpose for us having a data catalog? NodeGraph's data catalog is all about bringing all the assets in that you have in your data structure. We pull in everything. Of course, if we would present this to the end users, they will be overwhelmed. They don't need to know that we are reading from a column in the database somewhere from a basement. They don't need to have that information. But what we can do using our data catalog is that we can, for example, like one of our customers have created a KPI glossary. So they only visualize in the catalog, they have renamed it, rebranded it to KPI catalog, meaning that when they have a new user would like to find a KPI within sales, they have tagged all the KPIs in sales with the name sales. So when they go in and search here, sales, they will only see the KPIs that are related to sales. Meaning that now, instead of having someone trying to open, multiple different applications in the Qlik hub, or even worse, maybe you have both the Qlik hub, you have QlikView, and then you have Power BI and Tableau. You can go into one single point, identify, find a KPI, and then go directly to that source and continue your analysis. So that's only one use case with the data catalog. And another one could be from a business analyst side, saying that, all right, I would like to understand what data do we have that is related to customer, for example. Let's say customer, I only would like to see what QVDs we have, that we have customer data. Very quick way to identify that, all right, we have 2 QVDs with the name customers. If we would have tagged other QVDs with customer, they would have popped up as well, right? So you see, the data catalog is just an enabler for you guys to start questioning your data, understand your data, and find your data, most importantly. All right, that was the quick demo. I hope you all enjoyed it, and hope there's tons of questions for us to answer.
Thanks very much, Oskar. Yeah, we do have a few questions. Are you coming back on with us as well? Carl? Oh, here he is. There he is. Okay. So let me just rattle through one or two of these questions that we've got. Is it easy to install?
Should I jump on that one?
Yeah, either of you.
So I can jump on that one. So the installation process itself is very quick, but I think it's important also to understand that this is not just something you install and then just leave. I think this is a very good foundation for you to start a discussion around how we view the data, like the deployment, the framework example that I gave you. So I think together with your partner Ometis in this case, you should use NodeGraph as an enabler to start the discussion around data itself.
Okie doke. Thank you for that. What language is NodeGraph written in, and would I need a separate web server?
No, I mean, when we started developing NodeGraph, our goal was to say that if you can run Qlik, you should not have to install anything extra than that. So, I mean, as long as you have a web browser, which most of you guys have, just install it using the same .NET version as Qlik, and then you will access it through the browser.
Okay, thank you for that. And then I've got one or two questions around the actual data catalog itself. So there's people saying they've heard of Qlik data catalog. What is the difference between that and the NodeGraph data catalog?
I think that's a very good question, and that's why I started with the data catalog. Right now is a lot of things happening around data catalog itself, right? But if you look at the Qlik data catalog, it's all about onboarding data. So you will say that this QVD, I would like to be able to give access to this user for a self-service perspective, for example. So you onboard data into this, and then you have a consumer pulling that onboarded data out. What we are doing is, in an automated way, we are pulling in everything that you then can slice the way you would like to do it. So I would say that's the main difference, that you in Qlik catalog, you onboard certain data you'd like to have the user access to, whereas we pull in everything in an automated way, and then we decide what to show depending on the role that you have.
Okay, so linked to that one then, somebody else has asked, in that data catalog, can we see who has access to a QVD?
Yes, I mean, that kind of metadata you will find in the catalog. You will also, for example, since we pull in the session log as well, you can also view what the user have access to a certain application, for example, as well.
Okay, thank you. And then I've got some questions around pricing, of course. How is it priced? Is it user-based, server-based, or SaaS model?
So pricing, I would send right back to you, Ometis. Since we resell through partners, you are the king when it comes to pricing. So back at you.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Anybody who's asking that, so there's a couple of people asking around pricing. So yeah, we'll get back to you on those ones. Do you offer a free trial license? Is the other one?
Yes,
so
we do.
Yes,
that's something
we've done that with you.
we encourage.
Yeah. Yep. And is it version specific to Qlik Sense?
No. You can run any version of QlikView or Qlik Sense, and you can combine them as you wish.
Excellent. And last question I've got, well, actually there's two. So it's quite a specific one, actually. It's written in .NET. Our InfoSec would need to do a security vulnerability check before allowing it into the environment. Do you have those sorts of issues typically?
Sorry, I didn't
take offline. Yeah, so it's saying, so the question is, would we need to do, that they believe they would need to do a security vulnerability check before allowing it into their environment because it's written in .NET. Is that something that you come across? Or?
Well, not really. I mean, we have, no, I wouldn't say that, but I mean, that's definitely something we can take offline if we'd like to, if we investigate further. But I would imagine our other customers had run into that issue before, but I've never heard of it. So
I'm going to say we've got some big financial services companies on it between us, haven't we? So I'd be surprised if that was an issue. And then finally, last question: do you record user and dashboard usage stats?
well, we record, since we have this field tracker module where you can follow which user are using which application, but we do it on an application level. We don't look at every object in specific, what they are using.
No, and there are apps within certainly within Qlik Sense that address that as well. So
exactly, we would recommend that we do use those tools instead.
Yeah, we'll point them towards that, and that's it on the questions front. So yeah, we'll get for those of you that have asked slightly more specific ones, we'll get back to you shortly, and certainly around the pricing. There's 2 or 3 of you asked about that. It'll be myself or Sharon or Andy. We'll get back to you on those. But gentlemen, thank you very much for your time today. It's hopefully that's been really useful to a few people. Okay, everybody. Thank you all for joining us. Speak to you all again soon.